morning. In today's session, we will be seeing about the introduction for fuses. So what are fuses? Fuses are nothing but the elements which helps to protect against the equipments against damages. So it helps the power system equipments to protect against damages. So here the fuses are nothing but it is a short piece of material which when inserted in a circuit, so whenever there is going to be a short circuit, in that case whenever the excessive current flows through, it melts, the fuse element gets melts and breaks the circuit. Now we will see what is the need for the fuse. So fuse are nothing but they are used for the low to moderate voltage applications. They are inherently automatic. And here whenever we are going to use a circuit breaker, we have seen the problem of arc interruption and it requires elaborate equipments for arc interruption. Whereas, so whenever you are going to consider the fuses are going to be very cheap and it does not require any maintenance. Further, when you take the short circuit, it is able to interrupt even the heavy currents. Now, so where the places in which your circuit breaker becomes economical, so in that places you can use a fuse. Mainly it is used for the low to medium voltage applications. So now we will move on to what are the desirable characteristics of the fuse. So what are the characteristics of the fuse element? It should be, right? The first thing is that it should have low melting point. Okay, when you take the materials like tin and lead, it is one of the widely used materials for the fuse. The next is it should have low melting point. That is, in other words, it can withstand the heavy current when it has the so it has low melting point, so that whenever it is just acting as a protective device, so in that case whenever the excessive current comes, it immediately melts and protects the main power equipments against the damage from this short circuit. Next, it should have high conductivity. So, low melting point and high conductivity. If you could see about the low melting point, this tin and lead plays an important role. Whereas, in case of high conductivity, you can go in for the silver or copper wires. Now, the most important thing is that it should be free from deterioration due to oxidation. It should not get oxidized. The main element which we will be using is a silver. Now, the next thing is your low cost. So when I say it has a low cost, either I can go in for the tin, lead or your copper. Okay, now we will move on to the fuse operation. So this fuse operation is nothing but under normal condition, the temperature will be less than your melting point. That is, temperature of the fuse element will be less than the melting point. So under normal condition, the fuse element does not break and it does not melt and break the circuit. Whenever under overload condition or under short circuit condition, so the temperature due to the excessive current flow, the temperature of the fuse element becomes greater than its melting point, and as a result it melts and breaks the circuit and protects the equipment. Now we will see about the characteristics of your fuse. I have just plotted the current versus time and for various fuses, that is for various fuse levels, 60 amps fuse, 100 amps fuse and 200 amp fuse. From this it is observed that this fuse has an inverse time characteristics. So when you have the inverse time characteristics, it is nothing but, so whenever the magnitude of the current is going to be more, the relay should operate immediately so as to protect the power system devices, right? So in this case, when it is having inverse time protection, automatically it can be widely used for your overcurrent protection. Okay, now we have seen about the desirable characteristics of the fuse. Now we will move on to what are the possible fuse elements we can use. Now here, whenever you are going to go in for your lower current, you can go in for the tin lead alloy, where the composition should be of the tin being the higher quantity, that is 63%, whereas your lead alloy constitutes for 37%. For increased or greater current levels, you can go in for your copper or silver. Sometimes you can go in for your zinc strip also with time lag. Time lag is required that it does not quickly melt. Okay, so the elements which can use are tin, lead, silver, copper or zinc. Now whenever we are going to consider many elements, out of which what is the necessity for us to consider only the silver in spite of its higher cost? We will see what are the reasons. The first thing is it is free from oxidation. The next thing is it does not deteriorate whenever you are going to use it along with your dryer, because the conditions, it is going to be the different environmental conditions the fuses are going to be placed. In that case, it should not deteriorate when it has been used with your dryer. And one more thing is that the coefficient of expansion of the silver is very small, so it can be widely used as a fuse element. Next is the conductivity. As we have already seen this point, it is the conductivity of the silver is very high. And the last point to be noted is that it vaporizes at low temperature. What does it mean? It is nothing but whenever it is going to be required to be heated towards appropriate temperature, it will melt and it will ionize. Okay. So whenever it is going to be ionizing, then you cannot have a high resistance path. Instead, what we are doing, you are going to vaporize at low temperature itself. So whenever you are going to operate at low temperature than its reference or your prescribed temperature, what happens? So the high resistance, because whenever you are going to operate it at its particular temperature, then it will ionize immediately. That should not happen. So here you are going to vaporize at the low temperature so that it builds up a very high arc resistance, okay, between the 2 points. So whenever it is going to build a high arc resistance, what will happen? So it will not allow the current to reach the equipment. So thus it is able to interrupt the short circuit current. So with this, I wind up today's session. In the next session, we will be seeing about what are the various properties of the fuse element. Thank you.